Today we will be discussing Shina and Hay. So usually we focus on one Nakuda, one Sugya, but today we will be discussing Me'inyan La'inyan, various different questions of Chilas or Avelus. In our previous year, we discussed Aninus and the relationship between Aninus and Avelus. And today in Shina and Hay, we will start off with the din of Godel Abayis. So there are two different halachas in Godel Abayis, Siv Beis and Siv Chet. Misha Darkan Shloech HaMeis LeMedina Acheres LeKavroi, Ve'enem Yodim Moshe Yakovo, Me'ez Sheyachzu U'Paneim Meralavis Matchinu Le'Lois Shivo, V'Shloish, U'Matchilim Le'Is Abel. So this is halacha we discussed in the previous year as well. So if some of the family members stay home and others are malavid and it was common practice many years ago when Mason were taken from one city to the other, and transportation wasn't as convenient as it is today. So usually one or two or some family members went with the mace to the Kavura, and the others stayed at home. So Mashiachzeru Paneim, Midehader Apeyu, Yachzeru Paneim, Aramis Matchilim Avelis, Vaholchen, Yemoy Moinim Mashiachava, Veskim Sagoilo. Im Godla Mishpaka Hoylech Yemoy, Avelu Shebekan, Eina Moinim, Elo Mashiachava. So the Godla Bayis takes him to the Kavura, the ones that stay at home do not start immediately, and they will only have Avelis Mashiach Kara. So how would they know in the days of the Shulchan Aruch? And going back to the days of the Gemara, they didn't have email, they didn't have Zoom, they had nothing, they didn't have cell phones. So we're a Mishaya. Approximately, we know how long it takes to get there and how long it takes all the other things. So God Labayis, Hoylech when Nigrar Achrei Godel Abayis. And the Shach has a lengthy discussion, not as lengthy as Sifrot Yud Beis, but Sif Beis. The Shach deals with the question, if it's the other way around, if the Godel Abayis stays at home and the others go with a mace, are they also Nigrar Achrei Godel Abayis Lekula, or is it only Lechumra? And the Maskon of the Shach, contrary to many earlier poskim, is only Lechumra. The Godel Abayis is at home, and they are not Nigrar Achrei Godel Abayis, and they will only count the Stimas HaGoylo. So that is a machlokes in the poskim. Sif Ches deals with another situation in which Avelim come to a home, and the Godel Abayis is sitting there, and they weren't aware that there's supposed to be an Avelis, the Nigrar Achrei Godel Abayis. And this halacha isn't very relevant today because it is very uncommon that people that are supposed to be Avelim aren't aware that somebody passed away. It might be relevant regarding a very common question when a person passes away in America and they start sitting Avelis a day earlier than the ones in Eretz Yisrael, and the ones in Eretz Yisrael then will travel to sit with the members of the family, the Mokim where the Nifta was. So are they Nigrar Achrei Godel Abayis and they have one day less of Avelis or not? And that depends on Sif Ches. That is the other halacha. So the Shach and Sifkot Yud Beis as an Arichas Gedola, and what seems to be a stira between Siv Beis and Siv Chet. The Mechaber in Siv Beis and the Ramah in Siv Ches. So on Siv Beis, if the Godel Abayis goes with the Meis Lekavura and he comes home, all of them are Nigrar Achrei Godel Abayis, and they have an additional day of Avelis, even though they did not accompany the mace. So usually their din would be Mashiachzeru Paneim, they start Avelis, but if the Godel Abayis went with the mace, and they are Nigrar Achrei Godel Abayis. ולמון סעיף חס, יש אומרים, ואפילו אמרו אחד, ואין הגודל בבייס עד שהולך לצורך המייס. הם חוזר תורך ג' יום, מה בקירו בבייס? ובוא תורך ג' מוינה אימוהם. יש לו אוכל כסבור הזה. בכל שדין עלים מסמון. So this halacha, the deals not with the Avelim and the Godel Abayis that were from the beginning, but somebody that comes lebeis u'Avelim taraf yimon. Nigrar achar Godel Abayis, even though Godel Abayis is in home when he gets there. Polach litzoyrech hameis. But the understanding of the Shach is that the Ramah in this seif deals with the situation in which the Godel Abayis went. Litzoyrech hameis, litzoyrech kevuras hameis. And to take care of everything that is associated with Kevuras HaMeis. And when he comes back, he is Nigrar Achar B'nei Habayis. And the Shach sees a stira between Siv Beis and the Machaber, and Siv Kes and the Ramo, and therefore the Shach is Machalish Gaval. That what we learn in Siv Beis is only if the Godel Habayis went to Kevuras HaMeis, and he doesn't come back to the other Avelim. He continues from there to his home, and he actually lives b'mokem hakvura, and the other Avelim are back home. And in that case, all the Avelim are nigrar acharei Godel Habayis. But if the Godel Habayis went together with the mace, and he's coming back to sit with other family, with other members of the family, and he comes back to the home which they left. They were all together. Shasamis, and he comes back to them. In that case, he is Nigrar Achar. So that's a psak of the Shach, and most Achronim agree with the Shach. Der Chaim, Mercedes. Ocher Shochem brings the shit of the Yeshoim, but he seems to agree that he doesn't bring the dissenting shit. I'm the only one of the Achronim I'm aware of that has somewhat a question about the Psak of the Shach was the Kitzur Shulchan Aruch. And he writes that the Svara is not a Svara Bruder. I don't really understand it, but he doesn't clearly ask him against the Shach. Obviously, he didn't dare to pass him against the Shach, especially when the earlier Achronim agree with him. But the Ocher Shulchan leaves the Shach with the Torah Iyun. B'Svara, some argue, primarily the Ocher Shulchan, that it might be an Ikra Nistaba. If the Godel Habayis comes back here, he is Nigrar Achareim. And if he goes elsewhere, they are Nigrar Acharav. But that is the psak of the Shach, and the Shach brings this halacha from various different Rishonim. I did not have the opportunity of the time to check out all the Rishonim. And when I give you Shiur, you're a bit more into the details than I am right now. So I talk primarily about the Derech Achros halacha, but I would be happy if you fill in the gaps which I leave out. So this is the psak of the Shach, and I think most of the Achronim and Hilchos Avelis follow in the footsteps of Shach, as the case usually is. And it's very interesting. I know that in the Kodesh you dealt with at great length with the psak of the Moshe. So in Chelik Dalet, Ignis Moshe, Yoreh Samach, there's a tshuva dealing with various different questions of Avelis. And in the very last place, a very brief paragraph, somebody asked the Moshe about his psak. But we don't have the original psak of the Moshe, only the response that he responds to people that question this psak. But it seems to be clear that the Moshe passed in the Godel Habayis through to Eretz Yisrael, to the burial, and he comes back here. They are all Nigrar Achar Godel Habayis, and they sit Shiva Mizman HaKvura, and not Mishahir Ziru Penayim. And this is very common. This is very common. Hundreds of people, maybe even more, come every year to Eretz Yisrael from all over the Jewish world to Kuda. And many times Godel Habayis comes with the Oren and he flies back to sit with the rest of the family in America. And according to the Shach in that case, he has a Shor Avelis, and he is Nigrar Achareim, Misher Ziru Penayim, but the Moshe Pasmans, no, they are Nigrar Acharav. Does the Moshe pass the nigger achara, or just that he has what?
He splits it.
He splits.
Whoever wins those teams together.
Those that stay at home is Machshira B'nayim, but he needs the kid from Shasakur. I think that's the Psak. So I'm not so familiar with the Sefer Mesoyos Moshe, but I did see the discussion there. And according to what's written in Mesoyos Moshe, and I think I actually met the Machaber of Mesoyos Moshe in America. And he told me that every word there is agreed upon by the family. By the David Zecher Tzaddik Levrocha and the Reuben. But the David was more into halacha than the Reuben. And I will take this opportunity right after I finish the Shiur to speak a bit about the Mourning that David finds. So the Moshe argued in the Svara that the Shach is a Tzorchiyun. And he says, but does it make sense for two different reasons? One reason, Ikar Shas Avelis is Shas HaKvura, and not Mashiach Ziru B'nayim. So it's not Mistaber that the God Labayis that was there B'Shas HaKvura is Nigar Acharei B'nei Mishpacha that weren't B'Shas HaKvura. That is the Ikar Zman of Keres HaAvelis. And why would the God be Nigar Acharei HaKvura and not the other way around? And therefore, the Moshe Paskin that the God needs to keep Avelis Mishas. But it's the Shach. And the Moshe says, it's a mitzvah d'tmiyah. It's not a mitzvah d'tmiyah. Gedol Achronim didn't see it as a mitzvah d'tmiyah, and they're not tamei. And I think both arguments of the Moshe are not very compelling and very convincing arguments. Would we assume that Ikar Zman Avelis is Mishas HaKvura? I don't know why the Moshe thinks so. I mean, Ikar Shas Avelis is Mishas Sichudas Min HaMeis. And there are various different situations that we learn in Sinishki and INA in which we start Avelis even before the Kura, and we will soon discuss them. And the other argument of the Moshe, why would the God be Nigar Acharei HaKtanim? I think the Shach stresses, the Shach emphasizes, because he was together with the other part of the family, other members of the family to begin with. B'tchilas Avelis. Now, it's not exactly he was together with B'tchilas Avelis, because they started the Vedas after he left. But I think the kavanah of the Shach is the family was together b'shas hamisa. The family was together kishahotziu es hameis, and therefore he's merely coming back to his family. He left the family and he's coming back to them, and that is why he was nigrar achareim. And it's not that the God was nigrar acharei haktanim, but the hadgosh of the Shach is itchil imohem. They were all together, the Shas, the Nis, and therefore he left the family, he's coming back to the family, and he is part of them. That is the svara of the Shach.
And there's no Gadol Abayis. Then it would also just split so that the people who went according to Moshe's judgment. In most cases today, don't have a Gadol Abayis.
We will discuss shortly who is the Gadol Abayis. I don't know, because the Moshe, according to what is quoted in his name in the Mesoyos Moshe, he has two arguments. One argument would only be valid regarding the Gadol Abayis. The other argument would be valid even if it wouldn't be a Gadol Abayis. And I don't think that in Siman Samach, Ois Hey, in Chelik Daled, the Moshe clearly states, is his psak only because it's Gadol Abayis, or because that entire paragraph, that entire shtickle in Igros Moshe just deals with those that question this psak, but we don't have the original psak. So I don't think there's a clear mishmois. What would the Moshe Paskin if it wouldn't be dealing with the Gadol Abayis, but with a family member?
According to the Shach,
Do we have Gadol Abayis today? So the Shulchan Aruch writes, Smucham Olav. I think in this halacha, as in many others, we live in a changing world. So in families, once upon a time, many years ago, there was the breadwinner. Usually it was an individual. He was the one that supported and supplied all the other members of the family. So it is the case today in a family which the father usually cares for his children. But if the father is the one that passed away, who would be the Gadol Abayis? I think the Yoreh Shulchan writes, Amani Shel Abayis. the love to the one that supports the family financially. Who is the central figure? Who is the one that makes the decisions? Who is the one that calls the shots? So if the father is the one that passed away, probably the mother would be defined as the Godel Weiss. But it's difficult to define today. Do we have the concept of Godel? So I know some folks can say today there is no such a thing as Godel. Or if the one that passed away is another family member, not the father, then probably the father would be the Godel Weiss. The Shach writes that if a woman passed away, her husband would need to be the Godel Weiss. In normal circumstances, that's the way things should be. But not always is that the case. We know so many families in which the husband is not entirely functional, and he might be a great master, and one of the children is the one that bears the oil of Kalkola Sabayis, of supporting them. So my feeling is Godel Weiss is the central figure of the one that the others look up to, the one that makes the fundamental decisions of the family, and I'm not the one that cares the financial overall.
Many families, once the children are married, everyone runs their own little shop. There's no more.
Yes.
In that case.
Yeah, but if they all come to the home of the niftar and they're together with the mother, then the mother would be defined with the bias. She is the Godel of this bias.
Oh, this bias right now, even though.
Yeah, I think so. I think.
Based on the makam of where they're sitting,
yeah.
If they sit by one of the children.
They're all no, I don't think it depends in which house they're sitting.
It's who they're sitting.
They're a family, and either the patriarch or the matriarch, the mother is the one that all machadid, they're all mechuyah b'chvoida.
If the other parent is already there.
I don't think if it's only siblings, I don't think there would be a good.
Unless one supports whatever their own kailo.
Yeah, but that's very uncommon. Okay. If one is a rich one, and the Balamei is the Baladeya, and all the others are supported by him, then maybe he would be the Godel Weiss. But Yoisenerally, it's not one bias. It's just coincidental that they're all sitting together. In that case, there would be no Godel Weiss. The Godel Weiss is either a father or a mother, or a home in which the siblings are not married and they all live together.
Does an executor of a will matter? Meaning one of the brothers is the executor of the will. Is that enough to create a Godel Weiss?
You tell me. Does anybody say that the one in charge of the tzavor is the?
No, it's that funny because he runs the money now.
Some say the one in charge of the tzavor.
He runs the money.
Who?
Some of that freedom say it's only who's
Why would it depend on the Yerusha?
So I would say he's running the money right now. He's in charge. He's the checkbook. Same thing as the rich brother who pays the bill. Maybe I'm just asking.
Well, once again, it depends whether the tzavor is everything they have, and even if he is the one in charge of the tzavor. But if there is a tzavor, then they all have the rights that were given to them in the tzavor. So he's not the one supporting them.
That's not his money. It's just he's the.
Yeah. So why would he be defined as Godel Weiss? Who says that?
I think it's a derech chaim. It could just be referring that's just a simon that he was the one who was Sarah L'Mashmus.
So as I said, the one that has the authority, the one that all look up to, if there is one that all look up to and he makes the basic decisions of the family, he would be defined as Godel Weiss. So if they're married couples sitting together, or married brothers or sisters sitting together, I think there would be no Godel Weiss unless the mother is with them or the father is with them. So regarding the etzem halacha of tchilas or avelis, two seifim in Shiur and Hay, Shiur Daled and Shiur Zayin. So Shiur Daled deals with a situation in which we don't know when we could bury a person. He might be in jail, or it's a state of war, and people don't go out in the streets, and we have no idea when it would be possible to bury the dead. And in that case, if he is in a Orain, and that is when we start Avelis. So it's before Kabura. That is when they start Avelis. And this halacha, the source is in Rosh, and the Rosh brings the story of Rabbeinu Chronimus, was one of the great Rishonim, one of the Rebbeim of Rashi, and he passed away in the time of war. And they put him in an Aron in the Beis HaMikveh. So why did they put him in the mikveh? Not in the water of the mikveh, but obviously that was a place in which they put him in an Aron. And they hid him there, and his family was not related because they didn't know when they would have the schus. Therefore, they were not related. So the new minute of social, in Chumash Bereshis, I think in Parshas B'Yachid, that he's saying about Dinei Kvura, not Dinei Avelis. And I brought this lush, and I dealt with the lush. So the Shach writes, Siv Daled, that Mishosabor, that is Kvura Ma'aliyasa. Does that mean that they're Makaya Mitzvahs Kvura? When they put a mess in an Aron and they stack them away somewhere, waiting for the very first moment they would be able to be Makaya Mitzvahs Kvura? In Kvura Ela B'Karka. So today, we know exactly how to bury the dead. But in recent years, many questions have come up, and the source, the origin of all these questions is Mitzukat HaMakom. We don't have enough place, especially in Yerushalayim, for burial. Because Mesi Asur come to Yerushalayim from the entire world. And after all, the land was given to the living and not to the dead. So how much space can be able towards the mace? And therefore, it is very difficult to find a proper Mokoim Kvura in Yerushalayim. And many Yerushalayim is not to take a mace out of Yerushalayim to be buried elsewhere, which just compounds the problem. So I've dealt with many questions. Kvura B'Kumah. The same caver for two family members, a husband and a wife or a husband, one on top of the other. So if we will learn Dinam of Kvura, we have time to deal with these questions. But right now I want to speak about Avenis. So Chuvitz V'Hanhodes of Moshe Sternbuch in Chelik Gimel, and once again in Chelik Daled writes that once you put the mace into a Aron, that is as if Kvura, you're Makayim the mitzvah of Kvura. And Moshe Sternbuch writes, I always wondered, what is the heter to bring a mace from Chutz La'aretz to so on, and sometimes it takes 2 days, 3 days. With Corona, sometimes it took almost a week that we could get a mace from Chutz La'aretz to so on. And that is Alonas HaMace. What's the heter to be made in the mace? And Moshe Sternbuch writes, according to the Shach, it's not called Alonas HaMace because it's Kvura, he's buried. And I think that's a total mistake. The Shach means regarding Dinei Avelis, it is as if Kvura. So what bothers the Moshe Sternbuch, Alonas HaMace, doesn't bother me at all because it's a halacha Shita Muta Alonas HaMace. And this halacha has no limitation. Could be a day, could be a week, it could be a month. If it's L'Kvoida Muta Alonas HaMace. So Yosef HaTzadik brought Yaakov Avinu all the way from Mitzrayim to Eretz Yisrael, and it took more than 30 days, and there was no Isra of Alonas HaMace, because that was Kavodah. There's an amazing tshuva, Tshuva Sabacha Chadosh. Tshuva Sabacha Chadosh is an amazing tshuva, which I actually brought as a source. The Bach writes, person was murdered, and they were looking for the killer, for the murderer. And according to the regulations and the laws, they needed evidence. Once you bury the dead, they will not judge and pass verdict on the Roig Seach. So the Bach Paskins, we should not bury the dead till the police is successful in finding the Retzech, because it's Kvoida Meis that the Retzech should not go free. The mace that the Sheikh Yoreh Alon Shoy and the Bach Paskins, we will be Ma'achav Kvuras HaMace. So we will deal with these questions maybe at some later stage, but Poshet B'Yeina, the Kvura is Kvura, and Kvura is only the final Kvura. The Adoma, Kiyofarato Velofadoshu, putting a mace into an Aron is not Kvura. And all the Shach means is regarding the Dinei Avelis, once we put it into an Aron, it is all we can do right now. All the rest will have to wait. Therefore, Dine Avelos, it is as if La'achar HaKvura scheme is a goyrel, and therefore we're noying. And there are many different situations in which we cannot bury a mace, either because the mace is in a tfisa, like Maram Rotenburg. Maram Rotenburg, the great Rebbe of the was 12 months, the Weiss Asurim, and they didn't let his body out and they couldn't bury him. Or when in a state of war, when we can't go out to the Weiss Asurim. And in these situations, it is like Yachziru Paneim, just like Yachziru Paneim, and that is one that Ravshin Samach Vav, I think, it was about 14 years ago when there was the tsunami in Southeast Asia, in Indonesia. And I think 500,000 people perished. It was one of the greatest natural disasters in recent history. And there were common Medinei Yisrael. And I was asked about a Vedas, about a family that a couple was occasionally there, and the husband was swept away by the tsunami. I don't know what happened at the end of the day, whether it was found or not. The question was regarding Avelis. So at some stage, they stopped looking. And they said there's no chance of finding survivors. And by the Goyim, there's a limit how much effort they would make just to find the bodies, to find the deceased. And when they decided that there's no longer a chance to find the living people, they just have to search bodies. And I was asked by a Jewish family about Avelis. And that brings us to Sinu Zion. So when a person got lost by Mayim, Sheyesh Lehem Soif, Mishanis Yaishu, when they no longer search for his body, then they see Avelis. Well, the Tazan Shach quote, the Balaitu. The Balaitu says that this halacha is after B'mayim sheyesh lehem soif. But Mayim she'ein lehem soif, Mayim she'ein lehem soif, ein matir nesishto. And we are choishish, maybe the person that fell into the water got out of the water in a place beyond our sight. We're not aware of that. So Chachamim are machmir b'mayim she'ein lehem soif. The Balaitu says, because ishtoi asura ein mekoinenim olav. So the original halacha is not about Avelis, but rather about hesped ve'ein mekoinenim olav, because we are afraid. If we would be masped and mekoinen, then his wife will get married. And the Shach and the Taz, another place can say that who then there would be no Avelis. So the question was, so the woman wouldn't sit Avelis, but how about other family members? Would they be Avelim? Should they be noted Avelis or not? Or would we say, if the Shach and the Taz say there would be no Avelis, because if she would sit Avelis, how would we explain to her, you're a novel, that means we assume that he's dead. He's not going to come back. So why can't they get married? What about other family members? And what is the din mayim she'ein lehem sof when we're dealing with a woman that is lost, not a man, or a child, or a person that isn't married? What is the din then? So the Kivega, Shulchan Aruch on the spot brings that the Maram ben Chaviv the Sefer Ezras Noshim. I don't have the Sefer at home, therefore I'm not so familiar with it. The Maram ben Chaviv was the Kapis Morin and the Yom Teruah, very famous for him. But what is less well known is Shalosh Tshuvos Koil Godel. Those are the Tshuvos of Maram ben Chaviv. And Ezras Noshim and Dinei Agunois. To the Yud Zayin and Shulchan Aruch Eben Ezra. So the Akiva Eiger writes that the Ezras Noshim is Mesupak. The Gzeira of Mayim she'ein lehem soif. Is it across the board? Is it regardless of whether it's a man or a woman, married or not married, a child or an adult? And that's somewhat of a Gzeira. I don't know what the Maskana of the Ezras Noshim is, because the Akiva Eiger also doesn't bring the Maskana. he writes that Maram ben Chaviv's Dam deals with this question, but we do not find a psak in Rebbe Kiva Eger. Shuvas Chasam Sofer, Shin Mem Daled. Chasam Sofer was asked this question about a child that fell into Mayim Shein Lemsof with his parents, Sit Shiva. Would we say Loi Klug? So the Chasam Sofer on one hand writes, Alocha Kedivra Mekel B'Tevel. But this is not exactly Dinei Avelis. The question is, are we Geiser Gzeira L'Gzeira or not Geiser Gzeira L'Gzeira? And there's some Sofer B'Tchilas Tshuvas Noita La'achmiyah. And then he says, I saw in Shuvos Yaakov, was one of the great Achronim in two different Shuvas. Shuvos Yaakov, Telekalas Machul Beis, Telek Beis, Simen Kuf Yudalin. Shuvos Yaakov says that this Ablocha applies only when a husband fell into Mayim Shein Lemsof. Only when there really is a chashash. We're dealing with an aguna, and there's an aguna b'fanenu. Ve'ein gazer in gezeira legezeira. It is enough that we're chayshish and we're gezer gezeira, not to sit shiva because you might get married. But me'echet teisa lahachmir kulahai. It's not a chumrah that we find in the Gemara. It's a chumrah that we find first in the Rishonim, and therefore me'echet teisa lahachmir kulahai. And this is Mekel, and the Chasam Sofer is Machriya. So other Avelim would be Noed Avelis even b'Mayim Shein Lemsof. Because Mayim Shein Lemsof is a chumrah only mishum chumrah the Eishes Ish. But regarding Avelis, why shouldn't we sit Avelis? It's extremely unreasonable that he's alive. And therefore, if we're not dealing with an aguna, with a woman whose husband got lost b'Mayim Shein Lemsof, we do sit Avelis. That's the psak of the Shus Yaakov agreed upon by the Chasam Sofer. But what the Chasam Sofer and the Shus Yaakov don't deal with is, okay, it is a husband that has lost the Mayim Shein Lemsof. So his woman, his wife, wouldn't sit Avelis. But how about other family members? Would they be Avelis? So, according to Rebbe Kiva Eger, according to the tzad of Rebbe Kiva Eger, of course, they wouldn't sit Avelis, because even if we're dealing with a woman that's lost, there is no Avelis. We're going to Gzeira, and we say Loi Plug. But if the halacha is in accordance to the Shus Yaakov, how about other family members? Netias Libby was, it would be a chukah v'plura, that everybody is sitting shiva and his wife is not sitting shiva. That would be a total chukah v'plura. And therefore I ask him, that as long as they don't find a heter for her, nobody in the family would see shiva. So I assume at the end of the day that probably they found there. Because there's another tshuva in regarding agudas of the tsunami. And I was Mako after people were lost and nowhere to be found. So according to Minchas Osher number 2 or number 1, of course the tshuva regarding agudas of the tsunami is printed on the tshuva that I wrote about Avelis in that same period, was not printed yet. So my psak was that other families, as well as the woman would not sit shiva until she has a heter to get married, and there no longer is a chashash. If they sit shiva, then she might get married. Shalom.
Why isn't it a heter that she didn't sit everyone else sat? Like for her, she knows she can't get married.
But these are new svaros. I mean, I don't think heker is the right word. I mean, we could always tell a woman getting married is more chumrah than sitting shiva. You could sit shiva, but you don't get married. But if we are choishish, that if she sits shiva, she'll get married, maybe we need to be choishish. Everybody sat shiva. And if everybody sat shiva, obviously we assume that he passed away, so why can't they get married? So this question is somewhere in between the loy plug of the Ezes Noshim and the clarity that the husband definitely, that the wife definitely won't sit shiva. So this question is somewhere in between. And once again, so if we have a question, yes or no, I think they all should wait.
Like Kaddish and...
No, we wouldn't say Kaddish. We wouldn't say Kaddish. No, because the original halacha is about Mikodenis. It's not even about Avegas. Or Medama Avegas to other halachas. So as long as she doesn't get ahead of it, there would be no Kaddish either.
Why are these things in the Shmasa outside something that you say Kaddish as a life?
That's a very good question. So if I would be asked to learn Mishnayos, yeah, definitely yes. And the Mishnayos would be in his merit whether he's dead or alive. But we don't say Kaddish on the living person.
This Tshuva brings days lakan, we got a Kaddish. If Kaddish is a Goyim Machshash Kilko, we'll see the case. Is that also a Chash? Brings different stuff.
Actually, Goyim Machshash says core, Kaddish not, and then mitzvahs yes.
Yeah. As Cheskel says he could.
Yeah, we can change that. Yeah.
Since it became known that the Rabbanim and take care of all these shilas, is less of Chash, so she won't get remarried, so Kaddish you
And probably his svara is, why not say Kaddish Nishmosa? Is that the argument? Okay. Any other orders?
So davening for the Ombud is the other shilah of the person.
So what are the acronyms that say no Kaddish, no davening for the Yomit?
Gillian Marshall brings a Chiddush Beis Yehuda. The Osir Lemer Kaddish, the Spal of the Ombud Shori, I think, was broken, not.
Because the spiral of Neomit probably is not, it's something.
He says that there's no other. He says that there's no other though. There's no other. Right? Can't be derech hanagel. He says. Not so stark.
So the svara would be, you don't say Kaddish Yotzim unless you're saying Kaddish on a Niftar, but you could daven for the Yomit for many other reasons, or you could learn Mishnayos or do anything else. So what is the accepted psak today regarding Godel HaBayis? How do we define Godel HaBayis? What were your miskonas?
It's very unclear. The one clear case is if there's a father, that's or a mother or a father. Kiveger and Sifches brings it. It's true. The Shem should stop, but it's very much eating from the is sounds like the Shem should stop.
I think I saw the Orcha Shulchan once. The Orcha Shulchan uses that. Money is that found in earlier sources?
It's a schmatz in the Yorish.
Anyone who doesn't come out.
Yeah, in the Yorish.
Rashba says it.
What does Shul Sarashba say?
That even if there's a mother and a son, even though the son's Yerush, but the mother's going to rabbi.
Yeah. Why would it depend on Yerusha? Why would it depend on Yerusha? So that's a chiddush to me, what you quoted before, that the person that is in charge of taking care of the Yerusha depends on the bias and not on the Yerusha.
Why are we saying the guy that takes care of the Kura, like the Rashi says? It seems to be Machlokas a friend of Machlokas a friend. In the Chayil splits it.
Yeah, so one approach is that the Godel HaBayis is the one in charge of the Kura and the ceremonies associated with the Vedas and the Mace. But I think most boys can say, and that's a Shulchan Aruch, Nisma for
Moshe and some of the Chuvas imply that it's married siblings can't be Godel HaBayis.
As we said before, we stop it.
In a lot of the American poskim, or they begin at the beginning in America, it appears like a Moshe.
I don't wonder because the Moshe was.
Would the Rav tell the people in America not to be married like it? Like a chef?
See, there was the Shtar.
Yeah. Listen, it's very difficult to define the minhag. I think Moshe himself says there is no minhag.
If Sarah's Moshe, they quote him saying that.
There is no minhag. I wonder why. This is so common. I don't say.
He wrote the Tshuva in Tafshin Mem. Maybe then it was.
What?
The Tshuva was written in Tafshin Mem. Yes.
So it's a very well known Ramon, that there is no minhag v'dover she'enu yimotzu she'enu shachiach. But this is extremely common. Maybe going back 40 years, it wasn't as common. So if all the poskim in America pass according to the Moshe, I wouldn't pass it differently. But I definitely think think she'ein halacha k'mois, halacha k'divrei hashach. The shach reigns supreme. We always paskin according to the shach, whether he's against the Sman Choshen Mishpat or against the Taz and Yoreh. The shach is the halacha k'moisai. You know, I told you many times. In the Krolei Apsike, there are no definitive Krolim. But usually the halacha is k'shach. Especially, the Moshe was a giant of our generation, but after all, there were 400 years between the shach and the Elias Moshe. And especially that Moshe doesn't have a lengthy tshuva in which he deals with the poskim and the Rishonim. I definitely would say halacha k'divrei hashach, especially if Moshe is a chumrah. The Moshe is a chumrah, so halacha k'divrei hashach. And all the Achronim, or the vast majority of Achronim, all agree with the shach. The Chacham Solim quotes the shach, the Derech HaChaim quotes the shach, the Ochotolfin quotes the shach. So why? And it's not an ilsa to me. I think it's a Dover Mishashav Alev.